number 4. Now in this particular power standard, what's going to happen is they're going to give us a table of values, and we want to identify at what point in that table is it increasing or decreasing the fastest. For example, these are some that you're going to look at on your own here in a minute. So here we have a couple of tables. In that first one, they're asking us between which two consecutive integers is a function increasing the fastest. Where in the second one down here, we want to figure out between what two consecutive integers is the table decreasing the fastest. Well, in order for us to be able to figure out where it's increasing, where it's decreasing, we need to understand this concept of the rate of change, or the slope. Now, that's probably how you've heard of this before, is that you're probably familiar with the slope. Slope, there's a lot of different words that we use for it. But one common phrase, I should say, that we'll use for slope is this idea of the rate of change. And the way that we find slope is that if we're given two coordinates, or if we're given two values, we take and subtract the y values, so the second part of each of those coordinates, and put that in the numerator of our fraction. And we take and subtract or find the difference of the first two terms and put those in the denominator. Now we call these our x1 and y1 to refer to the first set of coordinates, and our x2 and y2 would refer to our second set of coordinates. So specifically, the slope formula is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Now if you'll notice, in the story problem, they're not going to ask specifically for the slope. Instead, they're asking you where is it increasing or decreasing the fastest. Because that's what the slope finds. The slope finds how steep our line is, or where it's or how it's increasing or how it's decreasing. So we're going to use slope a number of different times to figure out at what point it's increasing or decreasing at the highest rate. Here's what I mean by that. Let's look at this first example. In this first example, it says again, at what point is it increasing the fastest? Between what two consecutive integers is it increasing the fastest? Well, let's see how we can use slope to figure this out. Well, what we're going to do is this. First, if you recall from the slope formula, if I wanted to find the slope, or if I wanted to find the rate of change between these two consecutive integers, I would subtract my y values. In this case here, it's written as f of x. It's the same. F of x is referring to the value of the function. So the y values, I would subtract these. I would take -6 minus -9. Well, -6 minus a -9 would be the same as -6 plus 9, divided by our difference in x's. Well, 2 minus 1 would be in our denominator then. And -6 plus 9 is 3. 2 minus 1 is 1. So the rate of change between these two coordinates, between our consecutive integers here for x going from 1 to 2, would have a slope, or a rate of change, of 3. Now if I wanted to find the rate of change for going from the second coordinate to the third one, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my y values, which would be the -1 minus -6, which becomes -1 plus 6. In our denominator then, we're going to take 3 minus 2, because again I'm focusing now on this set of coordinates. Well, -1 plus 6 is 5, and 3 minus 2 is 1. So 5 divided by 1 is just going to be 5. So we see that here we would have a slope, or a rate of change, of 5. Now look at a common thing that's happening here. Look at a pattern here. So the first one, we had 2 minus 1 in our denominator, which gave us 1 as our answer. So the next one, we would take 3 minus 2 in our denominator, which gives us 1 as our answer. Because we're dealing with consecutive integers, our denominators are going to be 1. So to make this go a little faster, what we can do here is I can focus on just the change in y's, because here 6 minus -1 would be the same as 6 plus 1, which is 7, because here your change in x's would still be 1, because 4 minus 3 would be 1. So looking at the next consecutive integers, I would take and look at these between our x's are 4 and 5. Again, means our denominator is going to be 1. So 15 minus 6, oops, get ahead of myself. 15 minus 6 would end up giving us a difference of 9 for those two. And then to find the difference of the next consecutive integers, 26 minus 15 would be 11. And again, our denominator would be 1. So 11 divided by 1 would just be 11. And then lastly, between our 6th and 7th terms, or 6th and 7th values for x, we would take 39 minus 26. 39 minus 26 is 13. So we'd have a difference of 13 here. So we can see then that the steepest part of our graph is going to be where it's got a slope of 13, which is where we were finding the going from the 6th to the 7th term in that sequence. So between which consecutive integers is the function increasing the fastest? We would write our answers then to say that between 6 and 7 would be your answer. So let's look at this next one. It says between what two consecutive integers is a function decreasing the fastest? Well, again, we're dealing with consecutive integers, so if that's the case, our change in x is going to be 1 for each of these. So we're going to look at, again, just focusing on our change in y. Now, if I take 0.8 minus 1.8, I get a negative 1. So my rate of change here between these two would be negative 1. And if I look at the difference between the first, or 1 and 2 here, I'm going to take 0.2 minus 0.8. And 0.2 minus 0.8 will give me a negative 0.6. Looking at the next one, I would take 0 minus 0.2. Well, 0 minus 0.2 is negative 0.2. Now watch what happens. The next set, I would take 0.2 minus 0. 0.2 minus 0 is 0.2. The next set, I would take 0.8 minus 0.2. 0.8 minus 0.2 is 0.6. And 1.8 minus 0.8 gives us 1 whole. Now, some of these are negative, some of these are positive. If it's a positive value, that means that the slope of the line is increasing from left to right. If it's a negative value for your slope, that means the slope of the line is decreasing from left to right. And that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for what part of that graph is decreasing the fastest. Well, that's going to be where we have the largest negative number, which is negative 1. So my answer here would be between these two consecutive integers, between 0 and 1. Would be your answer. Okay, so remember those two that we looked at earlier? I want you guys to try these on your own. Let me do this so you can maybe see this better. Here we go. So I want you guys to take a minute now to see between what two consecutive integers is the function increasing the fastest for that first table, and see between what two consecutive integers is the function decreasing the fastest in that second table. So why don't you pause the video and hit play when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, so for this first one, you should have gotten between 2 and 3 as your answer. To illustrate that, if you found the difference here, you should have gotten negative 5.75. Between the next set, you'd get, if we found that difference, between 1 and 1.25, you end up getting a negative 0.25. Between the next set, you'd end up getting a positive 3.75. And between the next set, you end up getting a positive 6.25. And then between these two, where you get your answer of, you got a difference there of 7.25. And this one would have been 6.75. So again, you can see for this one that your steepest rate of change would be a 7.25, which is between the integers, consecutive integers of 2 and 3. So that's your answer for that one. The next one is asking for where is it decreasing the fastest. So again, you're looking for your largest negative number. So for this one, you should have gotten as your answer between -3 and -2. To illustrate that, if you find the difference between these two, you end up getting -2.5. The difference between the next consecutive integers is -1.5. The difference in the next consecutive integers is -0.5. The difference in the next set would be a +0.5. And then the next set would be a +1.5. And then here we'd end up getting +2.5. So again, since we're looking for where is it decreasing the fastest, we're looking for the largest negative number. So this would be between -3. So between -3 and -2 would be your answer. Well, there you have it. That was skill number 4. So hopefully now after watching this video you have a better understanding of how to figure out at what point in a table is the table increasing or decreasing the fastest. And good luck now as you try to attempt some of these now on your own.